Hello and welcome back to the development videos for the F-18 Hornet training campaign. It's basically a flight school that I'm putting together for those pilots who are struggling to master the Hornet with the lessons that were provided. I find that the lessons that came with the Hornet give you a good idea of the tasks that you need, of how to do a task, but not necessarily why you're doing that task, where that task fits into different things. And also, I think that the way that they kind of just drop you in right to where you're going to do the task removes all of the context that helps you to remember how to do that task. I find that just dropping in, doing the mechanics of a task, and then teleporting out just, I don't know, it doesn't cause me to remember how to do it. So I wanted to create something that kind of takes you through all of the things in a natural progression and brings you from no experience to being able to be competent out there doing things in the Hornet. So as I do with all of my videos, I'm going to do a quick summary of the training campaign as a whole, and then we'll do the specific missions that I'm trying to include in this video. So the idea is that the training program is broken up into 4 different blocks. Number 1 is the navigation portion, where you learn how to fly the aircraft around, find things with your radio primarily, and also GPS waypoints, learning how to manually enter GPS waypoints. Basically, a reasonable amount of focused down detail into how the navigation systems on your aircraft works, finding things with your radio, finding things with the TACAN, finding things with, getting from point A to point B, all that kind of stuff. Block 2 is the air-to-ground training block, where you're learning how to hit things on the ground. I basically designated this as a training range over here because it's a nice, big, flat area where I can put targets down, and they're relatively easy to find for those people who don't have a lot of experience in doing air-to-ground work. I find it's very difficult to see things on the ground in the first place, even in a flat field. So I wanted to give the best chance of being able to see things as possible, because I'm teaching concepts, not necessarily making you good. You becoming good is a practice thing that you have to do on your own. But at the very least, I can teach you the concepts of how this stuff works. The lessons can teach you the concepts of how this stuff works, and then you'll have a good foundation for which to go practice from. So you come over here, you do all of your air-to-ground stuff. You do your CCIP bombing, laser bombing, Mavericks, harms for the seed stuff. You do a couple of little combined operations where you're part of a two unit thing where one of you is doing seed and the other one's bombing, and then we flip-flop the roles where you're doing seed and the other one's doing the bombing. And then finally there's an exam where you show that you know how to do all of this stuff. At the end of every block, there's an exam lesson kind of thing that basically you can only pass it if you can sufficiently complete the tasks that you've learned so far. After the air-to-ground portion, we relocate over to Kabaletti, because I want to do as much of the fighting stuff over here, where there's a nice flat ocean over here. And you learn all of the basic things about the air-to-air stuff. So you learn about the radar, you learn about how the radar interacts with the missiles, and you learn how to do cranking, and you learn how to do IFF and all of that stuff. You learn how to use your IR missiles. You do a dogfight. You do some terrain masking to learn how the terrain can be used to your advantage to hide yourself from enemies and their missiles and things like that. And then finally, you do your test is a simulated attack on your airfield by a MiG-29 and a flight of Frogfoots, where your job is you need to come out and defeat the MiG-29, ideally, and then come out here and finish off the Frogfoots, because those should be relatively easy to kill. The real challenge is going to be the thing. So ideally, you come out, you defeat the MiG-29 using your BVR tactics, and then ideally you're able to TWS lock the Frogfoots and take them out like that. Now we're into the part where we're doing the carrier block, which is the last and, in my opinion, the hardest things to do. Carrier operations are difficult in the real world, and they're difficult in the game because they're reasonably simulated here in DCS. So you start out the carrier block with a relocation from Kabaletti, where we were doing the air-to-air portion, and you're going to fly out and you're going to go land on the carrier. But if you haven't watched any of my other videos, every single landing that you've done in this entire thing has been a simulated Case 1 recovery. Every time you come back and land at the airfield, you do your Case 1 pattern, you come back and you do your best to land on the numbers. And I've had, as a matter of fact, I actually need to remove these, but I'm glad that they're still here because it allows me to kind of explain to you how that works. From the very beginning, I've had these trigger zones set up here that basically detect how you landed. So you fly through this little trigger zone here, which activates the rest of these trigger zones. And then if you land in a zone, it'll tell you what you did. So if you landed too short, that's no bueno. I'm gonna have to go back and check that because that's not the way that's supposed to be. These are supposed to be turned around, and I'm fixing it on the one that doesn't even matter. Anyways, if you land too short, it simulates crashing into the back of the carrier. If you land too long, you miss the wires and you do a bolter. And then if you land in this little zone that's reasonably close to the letters, you get a good trap. And you do this the entire course. You fly, you do your 800-foot AGL, you brake afterwards, you swing back around, you come back in and land. And for every single lesson that we've done, this is how you land. There's one lesson where you do a night landing, and that simulates a case 3 recovery. But up until this point, you've done case 1. Case 1. So by the time you get to this lesson, the case 1 pattern should be so ingrained into what you've been doing that it's not even a problem. So there isn't really much to the lesson itself. You're told, hey, it's finally time to go to the carrier. You get a reminder to report inbound, because up to this point we've had to simulate doing that. There's no way to in the simulator itself to have the airfield pretend like it's a carrier. So I just had to say, okay, every time we got to 50 miles, and be like, okay, at this point you would report inbound and set your TAC in and do your BRC and all that stuff. Then you get some landing instructions where you're informed that, hey, this is going to be a little bit different, because normally you would pull back on the throttle to land once you're on the ground, but here you need to go full throttle, because if you don't hit the wire, you need to be able to go back around again. And then it also covers the wave off, and it also talks about how you need to use the ball to help get yourself down. That's not something you can really explain in a way that people are going to understand until they're actually into it. So I haven't really made a big deal about the ball up to this point, because you can talk about it all you want, but until you're actually approaching the carrier and you actually see what the ball is doing, you're not really going to understand it intuitively. You have to practice with it. That's just the way it is. So you get some landing instructions. I cover what the ball is and how to use it at this point. Excuse me. But it's the kind of thing where you just got to do it. Then I get a reminder to report see you at 10. And then once you get your good trap, which I've set it up so that there's a moving zone around the Stennis. And as long as your speed is lower than, say, 80 knots, I think that's a good, because the carrier is going to be moving. I can't put it at 0 because the carrier is going to be moving, which means that your speed is going to be moving. So I wanted to make it so that there's no way you could be flying at this point. So as long as you're in the zone that's surrounding this Stennis here, and your speed is low enough that you're clearly not flying anymore, then it marks the mission as complete, and then you're done. So that's the logic behind it. We'll see how it works. Like I said, I haven't tested any of the air-to-air portion or any of the carrier stuff that I've done so far. I'm just trying to I got tired of doing the nitty-gritty testing stuff, so I wanted to just kind of get the course roughed in, and then I can go back and finish doing all the testing and QC and quality control stuff. So carrier relocation, you take off from here, you land on the carrier. It's the first time you've seen the carrier during the entire course. We've been building up to this all the way from the beginning, and we've been practicing the case 1 pattern over and over again, so that it's not something that you have to think about too much once you get out here. You just have to do it well. The next thing we're going to do is carrier quals. And the idea behind this is you're basically just taking off from the carrier, getting at least 5 miles away, coming back, landing, going out, coming back, landing, and you have to get, I think I set it up for 3 good landings. Yeah, so you need to get 3 good traps. Once you get 3 good traps, that basically completes the mission and, quote unquote, quals you for the carrier. In the real world, carrier quals are like a lot. You do a lot of freaking takeoffs and landings and get a lot of traps in, but for the purposes of a video game, I didn't want to be ridiculous about it. So I feel like if you can get off and even if you have to go, do a bunch of bolters or whatever, if you can get 3 good traps at some point during all of that, I think that's reasonable to say, hey, at least I know how to do this. I might not be the best at it, but it's good enough. Next is going to be aerial refueling, which is another very difficult task for people to learn how to do. I will go in a little bit more in depth as to how I went about instructing these things. And I want to give a big thank you to Tourniquet HD, his channel. A lot of the concepts that I've learned have come from either him or the Grim Reaper's channel. Mostly Tourniquet HD, because he teaches things in the way that works for me, where you go into a little bit more detail on things and also cover some of the things not to do, because there's a lot of things where you learn the mechanics of something, but you don't understand that there are some variables that you need to pay attention to, and they are things to avoid, because if you do it this way, it's going to make it much harder. So shout out to Tourniquet HD. Definitely go check out his channel. He has a really great beginner series for the F-18. A lot of which I have used for putting this training course together. Okay, I need to remove that because that's no longer true. Sorry, I'm fixing things on the fly because I see them. Okay, so for this mission, we're learning aerial refueling. The mission itself is to take off from the carrier, hook up with the tanker to top off on your fuel, come over here and prosecute some ground targets. I didn't put any kind of anything into the ground targets over here. I think I said as long as you hit something over there. Well, I need to put some or statements in here. I'm sorry. I don't care. At this point, you've proven that you know how to prosecute air-to-ground targets. So I'm not concerned with you really doing anything to the targets. I just want to make sure that you actually fly all the way over here, destroy something, use up a bunch of fuel getting over here. And then ideally, as you fly back, you're probably going to be low enough on fuel that you're going to want to top off at the tanker to get a second pass at it. Or at the very least, if you you shouldn't be able to bypass the first pass of it. But anyways, I don't know. I gotta, like I said, this is the rough draft, so I still gotta go back and put roadblocks in place to prevent like as much cheating as I can. But then again, at the same time, I don't know if I even want to, if I even care about preventing cheating, because the purpose of this, if you're gonna pay money to go do this stuff and then cheat to do it, I don't understand your thought process, because the whole point is to make you better, and if you're not doing it the way you're instructed to do it, then what's the point? You spend all that money and you're not getting any better. So I don't know. I have to think about that. How much cheating prevention do I really want to put into any of this? Because the whole point is that it's supposed to be something that makes you better, and you're not going to get better if you cheat it. So why spend the money on it? I don't know. I got to think about it. I know I'm rambling. But anyways, the idea behind this is you take off from the carrier. Once you get to waypoint 1, we explain getting to the carrier, and then I have a bunch of I've been using the IP button on the cockpit to signal advancements in the instructions. So it'll say, press the IP button when you're ready for the next set of instructions. So you'll fly out to waypoint 1. It'll tell you how to report to the carrier. It'll tell you how to use your TACAN and air-to-air mode to find the tanker, to find the tanker. Then it tells you, okay, well, fly out to the tanker. And then once you can see it, press the IP button. Then once you can see the carrier, we talk about basic formation flying. And I basically set it up so that you have to use the little manual crosshair on your HUD and line that up with the wingtip on the left side of the aircraft, and then spend some time practicing holding that there, so that you can start figuring out the fine little detail controls of maintaining a formation with another aircraft. Then I say, once you feel like you're kind of comfortable maintaining your position in relation to the aircraft, press IP so that we can talk about getting into the drogue, the refueling drogue. I have you focus on the pod from which the hose is extending, rather than focusing on the drogue itself, because the drogue will shift around slightly, which will cause you to oscillate a lot. So you're going to use a fixed point of reference on the aircraft, and then just kind of glance over to see where you need to move the probe to get it in. You do your refueling. Once you're topped off, you fly over, you do your bombing, you come back. I inform you, hey, if you need to refuel, go ahead and do another pass at the tanker. Otherwise, go back to the carrier, do your recovery. That's it for that. And then finally, I haven't even really started with the night ops, so I'm not even going to load it yet. I know that's the next thing I want to do because it feels like it's kind of the next hardest thing. And it's basically just going to involve a combination of all of the air-to-ground stuff that we've done so far. Realistically, BVR isn't that big of a deal, whether you're in night or day, because you're using your systems anyway. The only thing you have to worry about is just not hitting the ground. And if you're paying attention to your altitude, that shouldn't be a problem. So it's just my thought process for it is that you're going to take off at night. You're going to do basically what we did here. You're going to come ashore. You're probably going to top off with a tanker. There'll be something over here in the range, but it'll be nighttime this time. And you're going to have to learn how to find targets at night and, use the IR systems to find things. Take out 1 or 2 targets. I don't want to make it too hard. You fly back. So basically the refueling mission is the refueling mission is kind of a twofold thing where the first time you're going to do it during the day, fight targets during the day, come back and land. And then you're going to come back and basically do the same thing again, except it's going to be at night this time. And the primary thing you're learning is hitting targets on the ground at night, but then you're going to continue hopefully practicing your aerial refueling. So that's the next thing. After that, I'm not really sure what else to put in this block of training. I'm sure that there are major concepts that I'm missing that I haven't thought of. Hopefully they will come to me. But realistically, I think by the time we've gotten to this point, we've covered every major topic that you need to know when it comes to using the Hornet. And you should be able to go out and do things with other people or just do missions on your own and have a reasonable chance of getting things done. Ideally. I have to come up with some kind of exam, assuming there aren't any other things I can think of that to include into this block of training. If you have any suggestions for difficult things that should be included at the very end in this kind of capstone block, please leave a comment down below, because the whole point of me posting these videos isn't to impress you with my mission editing skills, which are very limited. It's to get feedback from preferably people who know what they're doing and can provide me with better ways of explaining things, or maybe better ways of configuring things, or, hey, you missed this, or you totally messed this up. Because as I said, this whole thing is primarily intended because I don't have the tools. I don't have something like this available to me, so I want to make it. Not only for myself, but so that I can provide it as a guide for other people. As I've said, and as has been asked several times by different people, am I going to post this? I intend on posting this, but it's not going to be free. I will be trying to figure out how to get this on the DCS web store, assuming it's a good enough quality product that they're willing to accept it. Otherwise, I may put it on my Patreon. I'm not really sure, but it is definitely not, with the amount of time I've had to put into this, it's not going to be something that's free. So sorry about that. But yeah, ideally, by the time I've gone through and done all the quality control, hopefully the format and the way I explain things and the quantity of information that you're getting and the method in which it is being imparted to you is worth something like, $10. I think that's a reasonable price for something that's going to take you from not knowing anything to, hey, I can actually use this aircraft in a reasonable way. I think that's a reasonable fee, considering the fact that you probably spent $80 on the aircraft in the first place. So that's all I have to say about that. Anyways, if you got something out of this video, if you think it's cool, if you think it's something that is needed, be sure to click that like button so that the YouTube algorithm will push it out to more people. Subscribe to the channel so you can follow the rest of the development process as I post videos. I'm trying to continue to post updates so that you guys can see what is coming out. And I'm also looking for ideas for exclusive content that I can create for people who want to support the channel. You should get something for your money, not just donating to some dude on the internet. So if you have any ideas for content that you would like to see that is just for those of you who want to support the channel, please leave suggestions for that in the comments so that I can add it to the list of things I'm thinking about doing. Again, thank you very much for your time, and I hope to see you for the next one.